The void of space held no mercy, and Commander Kaito understood this better than most. He stood on the bridge of the Ascendant Hope, watching the damage report scroll across his display with growing dread. The colony ship had been traveling through the empty darkness between stars for 6 months, carrying 12,000 Viridian souls toward a new world. Now those souls were in danger. The accident happened without warning, a micro-singularity. A tiny hole in space itself had torn through their engine section like a bullet through paper. The antimatter containment failed instantly. Explosions ripped through 3 decks before automatic systems could seal the breach. Kaito had ordered the evacuation of engineering just seconds before the bulkhead slammed shut, saving most of the crew. But the damage was done. Chief Engineer Nari appeared on his communication screen, her luminescent skin patterns flickering with stress. The Viridians showed emotion through their skin, and right now, Nari's patterns screamed anxiety. Commander, the antimatter drives are completely destroyed. The fusion reactors are damaged beyond our ability to repair them out here. We're running on emergency power only. Kaito felt his own skin patterns shift to dark blues and grays. How long do we have? Nari looked at something off-screen, probably running calculations. Life support can function for 127 days. Maybe a few days more if we implement extreme rationing. After that, the recyclers will fail and we'll run out of breathable air. 127 days. Kaito turned to look at the main viewport where stars hung motionless in the black. They were in the middle of nowhere, light years from the nearest habitable system. Their momentum would carry them forward, but without engines they couldn't change course. They were a tomb sailing through space, and everyone aboard knew it. Navigation Officer Sunwoo worked at his station, fingers moving quickly over the controls. Commander, I've plotted our position. We're 634 light-years from our departure point, still 300 light-years from our destination. There are no habitable systems within conventional travel range. Kaito nodded slowly. He had expected this answer, but hearing it made the situation feel more real. Send out a distress signal. All frequencies, maximum power. Include our exact position, the nature of our emergency, and our time limit. Sunwoo began transmitting immediately. The signal would travel at light speed, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. It would reach 19 known spacefaring civilizations within the next few days. Surely someone would respond. Surely someone would help. The ship's AI, managed by systems analyst Ye Jin, began calculating resource management plans. Water recycling was reduced. Food synthesizers were limited to essential nutrients only. Non-essential sections of the ship were powered down. Every joule of energy mattered now. Medical Officer Hana set up emergency stations throughout the ship, treating the injured from the initial accident. 17 Viridians had died in the explosions. 43 were injured, some critically. Hana worked without rest, her medical training pushed to its limits. Days passed slowly. The distress signal continued broadcasting, a beacon of hope sent into the darkness. Morale Officer Jiho moved through the residential sections, talking to families, trying to keep panic from spreading. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. Why were the lights dimmer? Why was the food different? When would they reach the new world? On day 4, the first response arrived. The hegemony of Tal, a vast military empire controlling 400 star systems, acknowledged the distress call. Kaito felt a surge of hope as he read the message. Then he read it again more slowly, and the hope died. The hegemony acknowledges receipt of your distress transmission. After analysis of the situation, we regret to inform you that deploying rescue assets to your location falls outside operational parameters. Resource allocation for such a mission cannot be justified. We wish you fortune in your endeavors. Kaito stared at the message in disbelief. They were refusing. 19,000 Viridians were going to die, and the hegemony couldn't be bothered to send help because it was inconvenient. More responses came over the following days. The Arinthian consensus expressed sympathy, but explained their fastest ship would need 340 days to reach them. Too slow. The Phaedron Collective didn't respond at all. The Kelvin Union cited budgetary constraints. The Threshold Alliance suggested they remain calm and conserve resources, but offered no actual assistance. One by one, every contacted civilization delivered the same message in different words. Too far, too expensive, too difficult, not worth the effort. Nari visited the bridge on day 15, her skin patterns now a permanent dark gray. Commander, we need to start planning for the worst. If no help comes, we should consider— No, Kaito interrupted. We don't give up. Not while people are still breathing. But privately, alone in his quarters, Kaito felt despair creeping in. The galaxy had abandoned them. They were going to die out here. 12,000 people slowly suffocating in a metal tomb, and nobody cared. On day 29, everything changed. Sunwoo called Kaito to the bridge in the middle of the night cycle. Commander, we've received another response. But this one is different. Kaito pulled up the message, expecting another polite refusal. Instead, he found himself reading a transmission using strange, outdated protocols. The language was translated awkwardly by their computer, suggesting the species on the other end was using very different technology. This is the United Earth Space Navy, responding to your distress call. We have received your coordinates and understand the nature of your emergency. We are preparing a rescue mission. Hold on. We are coming. Kaito read it 3 times. In Earth? I've never heard of Earth. Where is it? Sunwoo checked the signal source. The transmission came from a star system 634 light-years away, Commander. That's incredibly far. And the signal technology they're using is primitive by our standards. Centuries old. How could they possibly reach us in time? Kaito wondered aloud. Even with advanced warp technology, crossing that distance in less than 127 days would require pushing engines to absolute maximum capacity. It would be dangerous, possibly suicidal. Yejin analyzed the Earth transmission more carefully. Commander, I don't think this species is even registered in the galactic database. They appear to be completely unknown. A very minor civilization if their signal technology is any indication. Kaito looked at the message again. These humans, whoever they were, had promised to come. While powerful empires and advanced civilizations had abandoned the Viridians, this unknown species had said yes. It seemed impossible. It seemed foolish, but it was hope. Kaito ordered a response sent. United Earth Space Navy, this is Commander Kaito of the Viridian colony ship Ascendant Hope. We received your message. We will hold on. Please hurry. News of the Earth response spread through the ship quickly. People wanted to believe. Children asked about Earth, about humans, about this mysterious species coming to save them. But adults were more cautious. How could an unknown civilization accomplish what 19 established powers had deemed impossible? Nari expressed what many were thinking. Commander, should we really put our faith in this? We know nothing about these humans. They might be making promises they can't keep. Kaito understood the concern. But what choice did they have? They're the only ones who answered, Nari. Everyone else told us we weren't worth saving. Earth said they're coming. Right now, that's all we have. The days continued to pass. Resources dwindled. Life support efficiency dropped slowly but steadily. Hana treated more cases of stress and anxiety. Jiho worked harder to maintain morale. Yejin's calculations became more grim with each passing day. But every day Kaito looked at that message from Earth. We are coming. Such simple words. Such an impossible promise. The galaxy had gone silent for the Viridians. 12,000 people floated through the void, forgotten by civilizations that should have helped. The powerful and advanced had turned away, but somewhere, 634 light-years away, a species they had never heard of was preparing to do the impossible. Humans were coming. Kaito didn't know if they would make it. He didn't know if they would survive the journey. He didn't even know who these humans were, but they had answered when no one else would. And for now, that was enough to keep hope alive. 6 months had passed since the rescue, and the galaxy was still talking about it. The story had spread through every communication network, reaching civilizations in every corner of known space. The Viridians shared complete logs of the mission, including all the technical data showing exactly how far the humans had pushed themselves. The numbers told a story that even the most cynical civilizations couldn't ignore. On Earth, the crew of the Perseverance returned home as heroes. Their ship had barely made it back, limping into Earth orbit on emergency power after the Viridians helped them refuel. The vessel was damaged in a dozen ways, stressed beyond what the designers ever imagined possible. But it had completed its mission. 12,000 Viridians were alive because of what that ship and crew had done. Admiral Youngsu stood at a ceremony in Seoul, presenting medals to Captain Hyunwoo and his crew. Representatives from 53 Earth nations attended, along with Commander Kaito and a delegation of Viridians who had traveled to Earth for the occasion. The crew of the Perseverance did more than save lives, Admiral Youngsu said to the assembled crowd. They showed the galaxy who humanity is. They proved that compassion isn't weakness. They demonstrated that sometimes the right choice is the hard choice, and that newer civilizations can teach older ones important lessons. Captain Hyunwoo accepted his medal, but insisted on sharing the recognition with his crew. We didn't do this alone. Every person on that ship pushed themselves beyond their limits. Engineer Ki-hyun kept our warp drive running when it should have exploded. Dr. Jisoo treated patients of a species she'd never met before. Pilot Minseo navigated through space that no human had ever crossed. We all did the impossible together, but the real impact of the rescue was being felt far beyond Earth. Across the galaxy, the established powers were having uncomfortable conversations about what the humans had done. The hegemony of Tal, the military empire that had first refused the Viridian distress call, held emergency council meetings. Their public relations officers struggled to explain why a less advanced species had accomplished something the hegemony deemed impossible. Quietly, without public announcement, the hegemony updated their rescue protocols. They couldn't admit the humans had embarrassed them, but they also couldn't ignore the message. The Orinthian consensus, the trading civilization known for their business sense, saw opportunity. They reached out to Earth, proposing trade agreements and cultural exchanges. If humans were willing to go this far to help strangers, imagine what they might do for actual allies. The Orinthians wanted in on whatever was happening with this new species. The Phaedron collective, who had called the rescue admirably foolish, found themselves facing questions from their own people. Young Phaedrons asked why their civilization, so old and advanced, hadn't helped the Viridians. Why had they left the rescue to a species barely 3 decades into warp travel? The Phaedron leadership had no good answers, but the smaller civilizations, the minor species who had always been ignored by the major powers, responded differently. They saw hope in what Earth had done. If humans could cross impossible distances to save Viridians, maybe the galaxy didn't have to be a cold place where only strategic value mattered. Commander Kaito, now representing the Viridian government, proposed something unprecedented. He visited Earth with a formal diplomatic delegation and met with Ambassador Chaewon at the United Nations headquarters. Ambassador, the Viridian people want to propose an alliance, Kaito said. Not just between Earth and Viridian homeworld, but something bigger. An alliance of what the major powers call minor civilizations. Species who believe in helping each other, who value compassion and cooperation. An alliance where distress calls get answered, where smaller species support each other instead of competing. Ambassador Chaewon considered the proposal carefully. You're talking about fundamentally changing the political structure of the galaxy. The major powers won't like this. The major powers left us to die, Kaito replied, his skin pattern showing determination. They've done the same to dozens of other species. It's time for something different. Earth proved it's possible. Will you help us build it? The Alliance of Free Peoples was announced 3 months later. Earth and the Viridian homeworld were co-founders, joined immediately by 6 other civilizations who had been ignored or dismissed by the major powers. They created a mutual defense pact and a rapid response rescue fleet. Any member species in distress would receive help from the others, regardless of distance or cost. The announcement sent shockwaves through galactic politics. The major powers had to reconsider how they treated smaller civilizations. They couldn't afford to push species into an opposing alliance, especially when that alliance was built on principles that made the major powers look selfish by comparison. Engineer Ki-hyun and Chief Engineer Nari continued their collaboration, now working together to design hybrid ships using both human and Viridian technology. Their first joint project was a new class of rescue vessel, faster and more durable than anything either species could build alone. They called it the Hope class, naming the first ship after the Ascendant Hope. Dr. Jisoo published papers on cross-species medicine that became required reading in medical schools across multiple civilizations. Her work treating Viridians had opened up entirely new fields of study. Medical officers throughout the galaxy now trained in xenobiology, preparing to help species they might never have encountered before. On Earth, young people who heard the story of the Perseverance enlisted in the Space Navy in record numbers. They wanted to be part of something meaningful, part of a service that answered distress calls instead of ignoring them. The waiting list for the Academy grew to 3 years, but the most significant changes happened quietly. in the behaviors of ordinary people across many worlds. A Phaedran merchant captain diverted his route to help a stranded Kelvin freighter, losing profit but gaining respect. An Orinthian research station shared their water supplies with a damaged colony ship instead of waiting for payment first. Small acts of compassion, inspired by what humans had done, began happening more frequently. Systems analyst Yejin, now working as a liaison officer between human and Viridian computer systems, tracked the data carefully. Ambassador, you should see these numbers. Distress call response rates have increased by 23% galaxy-wide since the Perseverance mission. Species are helping each other more often. Ambassador Chaewon studied the data with satisfaction. We planted a seed. The galaxy is changing slowly but surely. The inaugural ceremony for the Alliance of Free Peoples took place in Seoul, with delegates from 8 civilizations attending. Commander Kaido gave a speech that was transmitted to millions of viewers across dozens of worlds. 6 months ago, my people were dying. We called for help and the galaxy said no. Everyone except Earth. The humans crossed impossible distances because we needed them. They risked everything for strangers. Today we stand together to promise that no one will be abandoned again. When someone calls for help, the Alliance answers. That's who we are. That's what Earth taught us. The ceremony was interrupted by an alert. Admiral Young-soo received an urgent message and stepped away to review it. When he returned, his face was serious. We've received a new distress call, he announced to the assembled delegates, a species called the Keltheran. Their colony ship suffered a catastrophic failure. They're 891 light-years from Earth, stranded with failing life support. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. That was even farther than the Viridian rescue. More difficult. More dangerous. And preliminary reports showed that 43 civilizations had received the same distress call. The responses were already coming in. Too far, too expensive. Insufficient strategic value. The same answers as before. Ambassador Chaewon looked around at the faces of the Alliance delegates. This is what we formed the Alliance for. Someone is calling for help. Do we answer? Commander Kaido spoke first. The Viridians will contribute whatever resources we can. Ships, fuel, supplies. We owe Earth a debt we can never repay, but we can pay it forward. The other delegates agreed quickly. The Orinthian representative offered their fastest scout ship. The Phaedran delegate volunteered navigation expertise. Every species in the Alliance committed resources to the rescue. Captain Hyunwoo, who had been promoted to Commodore after the Viridian mission, stepped forward. Admiral, I volunteer to lead the mission. The Endeavor is ready. She's faster than the Perseverance, built with everything we learned from the last rescue. We can do this. Admiral Young-soo looked at the young Commodore. You understand this is even more dangerous than the last mission? Farther, more difficult, more risk? Yes, sir. I understand completely. And the Keltheran deserved the same chance we gave the Viridians. The decision was made quickly. The Alliance would mount a joint rescue mission. Earth's Endeavor would lead, accompanied by Viridian supply ships and supported by Orinthian navigation data. Multiple species working together to save strangers. This was the Alliance in action. As the delegates dispersed to prepare for the mission, Lyra, the young Viridian girl who had asked Communications Officer Yunzio about rain, stood watching from a viewing gallery. The Perseverance dropped out of warp on day 93, and for the first time, humans and aliens saw each other with their own eyes. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen showing the Ascendant Hope. The Viridian colony ship was massive, nearly 3 times the size of his vessel, but it looked wounded. Sections were dark, hull plates were damaged, and scorch marks from the original accident still marred its surface. Open communication channel, Captain Hyunwoo ordered. The screen split to show Commander Kaido's face. The Viridian was tall and elegant, with skin that shimmered with patterns of light. His large eyes were adapted for seeing in dim conditions, and his expression, though alien, clearly showed exhaustion and relief. Captain Hyunwoo, Kaido said, his voice translated by their computers. You actually came. You crossed all that distance. For us, we promised we would, Captain Hyunwoo replied simply. Commander, we don't have time for proper introductions. What's your most urgent need? Kaito pulled up data on his display. Life support is at 23% capacity. We have hull breaches expanding in 3 sections. Our structural integrity field is failing. Captain, we have maybe 12 hours before the ship starts breaking apart. Understood. We're deploying emergency teams now. The Perseverance moved into close formation with the Ascendant Hope, and for the first time in history, humans prepared to board an alien vessel. Engineer Ki-hyun led a team of specialists carrying equipment and supplies. They wore full EVA suits, not knowing what conditions they would find aboard the Viridian ship. The airlock connection was the first challenge. The Viridian ship used different docking mechanisms, different pressure standards, different atmospheric compositions. But both engineering teams worked together, Ki-hyun coordinating with Chief Engineer Nari through translated communications. After 20 minutes of careful adjustments, they achieved a seal. The airlock opened and Ki-hyun stepped through into the Viridian ship. The first thing he noticed was the air. It was thinner than Earth standard, with a slightly different smell. The lighting was dimmer, adjusted for Viridian eyes, and standing before him was Nari, the first alien he had ever met in person. Nari was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that glowed with soft blue and green patterns. She had 4 fingers on each hand, and her movements were graceful despite her obvious exhaustion. She extended her hand in what their cultural database said was a Viridian greeting gesture. Ki-hyun took her hand. The skin was warm and smooth, almost like touching silk. Chief Engineer Nari, I'm Engineer Ki-hyun. Show me your reactor. There was no time for ceremony or cultural exchange. Nari led Ki-hyun and his team through the damaged ship. Viridian crew members stopped to stare at the humans, their skin patterns shifting with surprise and hope. Children peered around corners, fascinated by the strange visitors. In the reactor chamber, Ki-hyun examined the damage. The Viridian technology was different from human designs, using different approaches to the same problems. But the underlying physics was universal. Power was power, energy was energy. He could work with this. Your reactor is damaged but repairable, Ki-hyun said, already pulling out tools. The main problem is here in the plasma containment. We need to reroute the magnetic field generators. Nari pulled up a schematic. We tried that already. The field keeps collapsing. Because you're using sequential activation. Try parallel activation instead. Your containment will be more stable. They worked together, human and Viridian hands side by side, combining 2 different engineering philosophies into a hybrid solution. Ki-hyun's team contributed human technology where it could help. Nari's team provided knowledge of the Viridian systems. Slowly, the reactor stabilized. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Dr. Jisoo was making history of her own. Medical Officer Hana had prepared a section for the human doctors, and together they examined the most critical patients. Dr. Jisoo had studied Viridian biology from transmitted data, but seeing it in person was different. The first patient was a Viridian child who had been injured in the original accident. His skin patterns were faint and irregular, signs of shock and pain. Dr. Jisoo examined him carefully, checking vital signs and comparing them to what she knew of Viridian physiology. The treatment principles are similar, she told Hana. Your people and mine evolved very differently, but life has common needs. Blood carries oxygen, cells need energy, pain means injury. I think our medications will work with proper dosage adjustment. She administered a carefully calculated dose of human pain medication, adjusted for Viridian metabolism. Within minutes, the child's skin pattern strengthened and stabilized. He was still injured, but the pain was managed. It worked. Word spread quickly through the ship. Human medicine could help Viridians. Dr. Jisoo and Hana began treating more patients, learning from each case, building a database of cross-species medical knowledge that would be valuable for generations. Pilot Min Seo worked with Navigation Officer Sun Woo to plot a course to the nearest safe harbor. They found a small trading station about 3 weeks away at conventional speeds. Both ships could make that journey together once the Ascendant Hope was stabilized. Communications Officer Yoon Seo found herself surrounded by curious Viridian children. They had heard her voice in the transmissions, heard her descriptions of Earth, and now they wanted to meet her in person. Through her translator device, she answered their questions. What's rain like? Asked a little girl named Lyra. Rain is water falling from the sky, Yoon Seo explained. It's cool and wet, and it makes everything smell fresh and clean. Plants grow because of rain. Rivers flow because of rain. We don't have rain in space, Lyra said sadly. No, but you have other things. You've seen more stars than most humans will ever see. You've traveled farther than most of my species ever will. The cultural exchange happened in these small moments. between emergency repairs and medical procedures. Humans and Viridians working together, learning about each other, finding common ground despite the vast differences. The combined crews worked for 38 hours straight. Human engineers and Viridian technicians moved through the ship, repairing damage, replacing components, and transferring supplies from the Perseverance. The work was exhausting and dangerous, but nobody stopped. Captain Hyunwoo toured the ship with Commander Kaito, assessing the damage and coordinating repairs. They walked through residential sections where families lived in cramped quarters, through darkened corridors where power was minimal, through the damaged engineering spaces where the accident had happened. "Your ship is beautiful," Captain Hyunwoo said. "Even damaged like this, I can see the care that went into building it." "It was supposed to carry us to a new world," Kaito replied. "A fresh start for our people. Now it's just a tomb we've been slowly dying in." "Not anymore. You're going to make it." They stopped in a viewing area looking out at the stars. The Perseverance hung in space nearby, looking small next to the massive colony ship. "Captain Hyunwoo," Kaito said quietly, "I need to ask you something. 19 civilizations received our distress call. All of them are more powerful than Earth, more advanced, with more resources. All of them said no. They said we weren't worth the cost, weren't worth the risk. But you came anyway. Why?" Captain Hyunwoo was silent for a moment, thinking about how to answer. "On Earth we have a saying, 'We are all we have.' It means that ultimately people only have each other. Out here, surrounded by all this emptiness, I think that's true for everyone. Viridian, human, or anyone else. We're all just trying to survive in a universe that doesn't care. When you called for help, we heard people in trouble. People who needed us. How could we say no to that?" Kaito's skin patterns shifted to colors the translation database said indicated deep emotion. "Your species risked everything to save strangers. That's not logical. That's not practical. But it's extraordinary." Finally, on hour 38, Chief Engineer Nari reported success. "Commander, life support is restored to 67% capacity. It's enough to sustain our population comfortably. The hull breaches are patched. The reactor is stable. We're going to survive." The announcement went out over the ship's communication system, and throughout the Ascendant Hope, 12,000 Viridians celebrated. They had been hours from death, abandoned by the galaxy, watching their children slowly suffocate. And then humans came. Unknown, relatively primitive humans who pushed their technology to the breaking point to save strangers. In the medical bay, Dr. Jisoo finished treating her last patient and looked around at the Viridian medical staff. They had worked together seamlessly. Two species with different biology but the same dedication to healing. She smiled, exhausted but satisfied. In engineering, Ki-hyun and Nari reviewed the repairs together. They had combined human and Viridian technology in ways neither species had imagined before. The hybrid systems were actually more efficient than the original designs. "We should keep working together," Nari said. "Even after this is over. There's so much we could learn from each other," Ki-hyun agreed. "I'd like that. Our species think differently, engineer differently. Together we could build amazing things." Captain Hyunwoo and Commander Kaito stood together on the bridge, watching their crews interact. Humans and Viridians working side by side, sharing tools and knowledge. The first 3 weeks went better than expected. The Perseverance maintained its brutal pace through space, the warp drive humming at power levels that made Engineer Ki-hyun nervous every time he checked the readings. But the ship held together, and the crew settled into a rhythm of constant vigilance and maintenance. Then, on day 23, the first crisis hit. Ki-hyun was running his routine inspection when he noticed something wrong. A microscopic fracture had appeared in the port warp nacelle, the massive structure that generated half of their warp field. At their current speed, the stress on that fracture would make it grow. If it grew too large, the entire warp field would collapse, possibly destroying the ship. He immediately called Captain Hyunwoo to engineering. "Captain, we have a serious problem. This fracture is expanding. At current rate, we have maybe 10 days before catastrophic failure." Captain Hyunwoo studied the data. "What are our options? We can drop out of warp and make repairs, but that would add 11 days to our journey time." The captain's face went grim. "The Viridians don't have 11 extra days. What other options do we have?" Ki-hyun pulled up a schematic he had been working on. "There's one possibility. We could attempt repairs while maintaining warp speed. Send an EVA team to the nacelle and seal the fracture with emergency patches. But Captain, nobody has ever tried this. The warp field distorts space around the ship. Sending people out there could be extremely dangerous. Will the patches hold? If we can apply them correctly, yes. The patches are designed for exactly this kind of emergency. But working while space is literally bending around you is something we've never tested. Captain Hyunwoo made the decision quickly. Prepare the EVA team. You'll lead it, Ki-hyun. Take your 2 best engineers. We can't afford to lose those 11 days. 3 hours later, Ki-hyun and 2 specialists suited up in the airlock. The suits were designed for extreme conditions, but this situation was beyond extreme. They would be stepping onto the hull of a ship traveling faster than light, surrounded by a bubble of warped space. The airlock opened, and Ki-hyun stepped out onto the hull. The view was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Stars ahead were compressed into brilliant blue points. Stars behind stretched into red streaks. The space itself seemed to shimmer and ripple, like heat waves on a hot day. His suit's sensors were giving confused readings, unable to properly measure distances in the distorted space. Stay focused, he told his team through the radio. Follow safety protocols exactly. Move slowly and carefully. They made their way along the hull toward the port nacelle. Every step felt strange, like walking through water. The warp field created odd sensations, making it hard to judge distance and direction. One of the engineers reported feeling dizzy, and Ki-hyun reminded him to focus on his hands and the work, not the impossible view around them. The fracture was worse up close than the sensors had shown. The metal was actually vibrating from the stress, creating a high-pitched sound they could feel through their boots. Ki-hyun pulled out the first emergency patch, a complex piece of material designed to bond at the molecular level. Working in the distorted space was nightmare fuel. His hands seemed to move at different speeds depending on how he positioned them. The tools behaved oddly, and twice he nearly dropped important equipment. But years of training took over. Step by step, patch by patch, they sealed the fracture. 47 minutes after stepping outside, they returned to the airlock. All 3 engineers were shaking, partly from adrenaline and partly from the disturbing experience of working while space bent around them. But the job was done. The fracture was sealed. Warp field stable, reported the bridge. Good work, engineering team. The patch is holding. On day 38, the Perseverance received an unexpected message. A ship from the Phaedron Collective, one of the galaxy's oldest spacefaring species, had been monitoring their progress. The Phaedron captain opened a communication channel. The Phaedrons appeared on screen, looking like tall, elegant beings with feathered crests and 4 arms. The captain spoke through a translation system. Human vessel, this is Phaedron scout ship Swift Current. We have been observing your rescue attempt with great interest. May we speak with your commander? Captain Hyunwoo responded. This is Captain Hyunwoo of the UESN Perseverance. We're currently on a rescue mission and can't afford delays. The Phaedron captain made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. Yes, we are aware of your mission. Forgive my directness, but my crew is confused. In 4,000 years of Phaedron spacefaring history, we have never seen a civilization attempt a rescue at this distance for an unallied species. Your technology is primitive compared to ours, yet you are attempting something we would consider impossible. Why? Captain Hyunwoo thought about how to answer. The Viridians called for help. We could respond, so we did. It's really that simple. Simple? The Phaedron captain's crest raised, suggesting surprise. You risk your only advanced vessel and your best crew for strangers. This is not simple, Captain. This is unprecedented. We wish you success in your admirably foolish endeavor. The Phaedron ship departed, but Captain Hyunwoo knew the conversation would be shared across the galaxy. Earth's rescue attempt was becoming famous, or perhaps infamous. Meanwhile, aboard the Ascendant Hope, conditions were getting worse every day. Medical Officer Hana treated increasing cases of malnutrition. The food synthesizers, running on reduced power, couldn't create meals with proper nutrition. People were getting weaker. Commander Kaido implemented rotating sleep schedules to reduce oxygen consumption. Families spent 18 hours a day in forced rest periods, lying in their quarters to conserve energy and air. Systems analyst Yejin continued shutting down sections of the ship, consolidating everyone into smaller areas. Then Chief Engineer Nari discovered a new problem. The radiation from the micro-singularity that had destroyed their engines had spread through the ship's structure. The exotic particles were slowly degrading the hull's integrity. Nari's calculations showed that structural failure could occur as early as day 115. That's before the humans arrive, Commander Kaito said quietly. I know. I'm working on solutions, but with our limited power, there's only so much I can do to reinforce the hull. Kaito made the difficult decision to inform Captain Hyunwoo of the new timeline. The message took time to cross the distance between ships, but when it arrived, the crew of the Perseverance felt the pressure increase. They had to go faster or arrive to find the Viridians already dead. On day 60, the Perseverance was showing serious strain. The warp core was running at 94% efficiency, down from the optimal 100%. Engineer Ki-hyun reported that they were consuming antimatter fuel faster than projected. They had enough to reach the Viridians but wouldn't have enough to return home without refueling. Captain Hyunwoo called a crew meeting. Everyone needs to understand our situation. We can reach the Viridians, but getting home will be a problem. If anyone wants to voice concerns, now is the time. Pilot Minseo spoke first. Captain, we all knew this was dangerous when we volunteered. We get there first. We save them. Then we figure out how to get home. The rest of the crew agreed. Not a single person suggested turning back or slowing down to conserve fuel. They had made a promise and they would keep it. Both ships transmitted daily updates now, maintaining each other's hope across the shrinking distance. Communications Officer Yunseo shared information about Earth with the Viridians. She described oceans, rain, forests, mountains, concepts that many Viridians who had lived their whole lives in space had never experienced except in virtual simulations. Viridian children created drawings of Earth based on these descriptions, imagining a blue world with water and life. They made pictures for the human crew, transmitted across space as data files. Captain Hyunwoo had them displayed throughout the Perseverance, reminding everyone why they were pushing so hard. Dr. Jisoo continued studying Viridian biology, preparing for the medical challenges ahead. She was increasingly confident that human medical knowledge could help the aliens. The biology was different, but the underlying chemistry was similar enough that treatments should work with proper adjustments. On day 73, the Perseverance faced its worst crisis yet. Engineer Ki-hyun was running standard checks when the warp drive suddenly developed a harmonic resonance, a dangerous feedback loop in the warp field generators. Alarms screamed throughout engineering. Emergency shutdown of secondary systems, Ki-hyun shouted. Reroute power through backup conduits. The ship shuddered violently. Lights flickered. For 6 terrifying hours, the engineering team fought to stabilize the warp drive. Ki-hyun rerouted power through systems never designed to handle such loads. Circuits burned out and had to be replaced on the fly. Engineers worked in spaces filled with dangerous radiation levels, accepting the exposure because there was no other choice. Finally, they achieved stability. But the damage was done. The ship's maximum speed was now reduced. Pilot Minseo ran new calculations, her face grim. Captain revised ETA as day 95, 4 days beyond the Viridian's survival window. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge, feeling the weight of 12,000 lives pressing down on him. 4 days. They had come so far, pushed so hard. The signal reached Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network at exactly 0347 Universal Time. Communications. Technician Ha-jun was finishing his night shift at the Lunar Monitoring Facility when the computers began alerting him to an unusual transmission. He had been working at the station for 3 years and had never seen anything like it. The signal was clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, and clearly not human. Ha-jun's hands shook slightly as he began the decoding process. Within minutes, he understood what he was looking at. An alien species was calling for help. They were dying, stranded in deep space, and they had sent a message to anyone who might be listening. Ha-jun immediately contacted his superiors. Within 2 hours, the message had reached Admiral Young-soo at the United Earth Space Navy headquarters on Luna Station. Within 4 hours, Earth's top military and scientific leaders were gathering for an emergency meeting. Admiral Young-soo stood before a holographic display showing the Viridian position. Ladies and gentlemen, we have confirmed first contact with an alien species. Unfortunately, they are in serious trouble. Their ship is stranded and they have approximately 127 days before their life support fails completely. 12,000 lives are at stake. Dr. Suman, the chief of warp propulsion research, studied the data carefully. She was one of the scientists who had helped develop Earth's warp drive technology 30 years ago. Admiral, the distance is extreme. 634 light-years. Our fastest ship, the Perseverance, could theoretically make the journey, but it would require running the warp drive at maximum capacity for 91 days straight. We've never tested the drives at that level for more than a few days. Captain Hyunwoo, commander of the Perseverance, leaned forward. What are the risks, Doctor? Dr. Suman pulled up technical diagrams. The warp core would be operating at 127% of recommended capacity. Heat buildup would be extreme. Stress on the warp nacelles would be severe. My calculations suggest a 34% chance of catastrophic failure during the journey. That means there's a good chance we would lose the ship and everyone aboard. The room fell silent. Ambassador Chaewon, liaison to the Planetary Council, spoke carefully. Has anyone else responded to this distress call? Hajun answered from his position at the communication console. Ambassador, we've been monitoring follow-up transmissions. 19 different civilizations received the signal. All of them have declined to help. The reasons vary, but they all essentially say the same thing. The rescue would be too expensive, too difficult, or too risky. Fleet Coordinator Jamin looked troubled. So 19 more advanced civilizations, species with more experience and better technology, all decided this rescue was impossible or not worth attempting. And we're considering trying it anyway? That's exactly why we should try, Ambassador Chaewon said firmly. Think about what this means. Earth is about to announce itself to the galaxy for the first time. This will be our first impression. Do we want to be known as the species that stood by and let 12,000 people die? Or do we want to show the galaxy that humans are different? Arguments began flowing around the table. The Resource Committee representative pointed out that the mission would cost 3 years' worth of deep space exploration budget. The colonial representative mentioned that Earth's own colonies were struggling and could use those resources. The military representative worried about sending Earth's best ship on such a dangerous mission. But Captain Hyunwoo remained quiet, thinking. Finally, he spoke. Permission to address the Council, Admiral? Admiral Young-soo nodded. Go ahead, Captain. My crew and I joined the Space Navy to explore, to discover, and to represent humanity among the stars. Right now, people are dying. They called for help, and everyone with the power to save them said no. If we make the same choice, what does that say about us? What kind of species do we want to be? He stood up, looking around the room. Yes, the mission is dangerous. Yes, we might fail. But if we don't try, those 12,000 people will definitely die. The Perseverance is the fastest ship we have. My crew is the best trained. If anyone can do this, it's us, and I'm volunteering to lead the mission. Fleet Coordinator Jamin studied Captain Hyunwoo carefully. You understand that you might not come back? That you're risking your life and the lives of 93 crew members on a rescue mission for aliens we've never even met? Yes, sir. I understand completely. And I still volunteer. Admiral Young-soo looked around the table, reading faces. Then he made his decision. The mission is approved. Captain Hyunwoo, you will command the rescue operation. Take whatever crew and supplies you need. Dr. Suman, I want your best engineers supporting this mission. We launch in 48 hours. The preparation moved with incredible speed. The Perseverance was already Earth's most advanced vessel, but engineers worked around the clock to optimize every system. Engineer Ki-hyun, who had designed the warp core, personally oversaw modifications to improve heat management. Extra antimatter fuel pods were loaded. Medical supplies were stocked for unknown alien biology. Dr. Jisoo, a xenobiologist and medical officer, studied every piece of transmitted data about Viridian physiology. She had no idea if human medicine would work on aliens, but she prepared for every possibility. Pilot Minseo ran thousands of navigation simulations, plotting the most efficient course. Communications Officer Yunseo worked to learn the Viridian language, using the transmitted data to build a translation database. When the crew assembled for final briefing, Captain Hyunwoo looked at each face. These were Earth's best, scientists, engineers, medical staff, and military personnel. They all knew the risks. They all volunteered anyway. We're attempting something that has never been done before, Captain Hyunwoo said. We're going to push our ship and ourselves to the absolute limit. Some of you might not make it home, but 12,000 people are counting on us. The whole galaxy is watching to see what humanity will do. Let's show them who we are. The Perseverance launched from Luna Station with Earth watching. News of the rescue mission had spread quickly, and people across the planet were glued to their screens. This was humanity's moment. This was their introduction to the galactic community. As the ship moved away from Earth, Captain Hyunwoo opened a communication channel to the Viridians. The message would take time to reach them, but he wanted them to know. This is UESN Perseverance to Viridian Colony Ship Ascendant Hope. We are en route to your position. Estimated time of arrival is 91 days. Hold on, don't give up. We're coming. Engineer Ki-hyun monitored the warp drive as they engaged it for the first time. The space around the ship began to compress and stretch. Stars ahead turned blue, stars behind turned red. Reality bent around them as they accelerated to speeds that broke all conventional rules of physics. Warp drive stable, Ki-hyun reported, running at 127% capacity. Temperature is climbing, but within acceptable range. All systems showing green. Dr. Suman watched the readings from the engineering station. Captain, we're committed now. At this speed and power level, we can't afford to stop except for critical emergencies. Every hour we run the drive like this increases the risk of failure. Captain Hyunwoo understood. They were racing against time, pushing technology to its breaking point, crossing a distance that more powerful civilizations had called impossible. But they had made a promise. Back on the Ascendant Hope, Commander Kaito received the message from Captain Hyunwoo. He played it for the entire crew over the ship's communication system. 91 days. The humans were coming and they would arrive with days to spare. Chief Engineer Nari began new calculations. If we implement maximum rationing and shut down more sections, we can make our resources last 95 days. It will be hard, but we can survive until they arrive. The news spread through the Viridian ship like electricity. Hope, which had been dying, suddenly burned bright again. Children asked their parents about humans. What did they look like? What was Earth like? Why were they coming to help strangers? Medical Officer Hana prepared her facilities to receive help from an unknown species. Systems Analyst Yejin began organizing data about Viridian biology and technology to share with the humans. Even Morale Officer Jiho found his job easier. People had something to believe in now. But the journey ahead would test both ships. The Perseverance was attempting the impossible, running at speeds and power levels never tested. The Ascendant Hope had to survive long enough for rescue to arrive. And between them lay 634 light-years of empty space. Across the galaxy, other civilizations monitored the situation with curiosity. The humans were actually attempting the rescue. This unknown, primitive species was crossing distances that established powers had deemed too difficult. Some observers were amused. Some were skeptical. And some began to wonder what kind of species these humans really were. The race against time had begun,